大家好，今天是4月16号，2025年。今天早上Asml代码 ASML 财报，我想快速分享一下我看过财报以后我有什么想法。
Hello and welcome to ASML's Q1 2025 results. Welcome Christophe, welcome Roger. Roger, if I can start with you, can you provide us an overview of Q1 2025 results?
Sure. Total net sales came in at 7.7 billion euros, included in there 2 billion for installed base business, the 7.7 within guidance. Gross margin came in a little bit better than guidance at 54%. Main reasons why it was a bit better, actually two. One, ASP for EUV was higher as a result of a more 3800s versus 3600s in the mix than we anticipated, and also because the configuration of the EUV tools was a bit richer than we anticipated. Second main reason is that we hit some customer-specific performance targets for the quarter, and we got rewarded for that. Net income for the quarter came in at 2.4 billion euros, and the order intake was 3.9 billion of orders for the quarter, included in there 1.2 billion for EUV.
说一下啊，他前面讲的就是说他的第一季度的这个收入7.7个 billion， 然后呢，他这里7.7个 billion 是不及预期的，然后呢，他的 earning 呢是超预期的，它 net income 超预期，它的 gross margin 是54%，54%呢比平时高一点。过去的几个季度一般都是50%、51%、52%，最高的时候53%。这次54%是因为有点原因的，主要原因是因为它这个每一台机器都卖的贵一点，每台机器卖的贵里面有2个原因。第一个原因是它本身就提高了一点价格，然后呢，第二点是它这个机器的设备的，我觉得他说这个 configuration 是它的零件啊，因为它的零件有些是要运到美国的，然后再回到荷兰还是德国，然后它这个每个零件都变贵了嘛，所以它这个机器整个有贵了。他说的第二个原因就是说他们机器呢，这个 EUV 这个光刻机，然后完成了非常好，客户给了他们一个奖励。那么接下来接着看哈。
Christophe, if I can turn to you and ask you if you can give us some insights on how you're looking at the full year 2025 in terms of the market.
Well, I think the dynamic is very similar to what we discussed last quarter. AI is still the driver of the market. The demand is strong. It remains strong. And we see two scenarios. If the demand on AI continue to be strong and our customers are capable to add capacity, so we have basically opportunity for an upside, looking at the upper range of our guidance, the 35 billion euro. On the other hand, we still see some uncertainty with some of our customers that could also, take us to the lower hand of the guidance, the 30 billion euro. But overall, same dynamic.
Then can you share some more insights on how you're looking at the different segments, logic, memory, and install base through 2025?
Yeah, so we still see logic increasing. I think it's very strong, especially because of advanced logic. We've been talking about 2 nanometer for a long time. This is now happening, and customers are ramping their very advanced logic node. For memory, we think memory will remain strong, same level as last year, and this is also being confirmed by the activity of our customer. When it comes to the install base, our install base is growing. We see a stronger mix of EUV versus DUV, and this is also leading to some growth in the install base in 2025.
And then how do you see the dynamics around tariffs playing a role in the markets?
Well, I think the whole dynamic is still very new. And I think the one thing I like to say, which is being shared by many experts, many businesses, is that this dynamic is creating a new uncertainty, especially when it comes to GDP, so micro level, and indirectly, of course, our potential market demand. So this is a dynamic I think we have to watch very carefully. Now, this being said, where we are today, we still see basically our revenue range for 2025 being between basically 30 and 35 billion euros.
公司高管回答一下主持人的问题，就是对公司全年这个收入的指引是什么？那高管就说，这个整体来说，人工智能需求还是很旺盛，也是主要的驱动力。但是呢，其中的不确定性和是否市场需求强劲，决定了它是否能完成350个亿，或者是300个亿这么一个目标。所以它全年收入给的是300到350个亿这么一个区间。那对公司的3个主要的营收，创造营收的这么一个3个板块呢，一个是 logic chip， 就是它这个芯片，然后另一个是它这个管理内存，像 DRAM 这种产品，还有 install base 是它服务或者是在 售后类似这种，就主要这三个板块，它的营收呢也都需求强劲，所以他又简单的说一下，他对关税呢并没有给太多意见，只是认为这还是一个新的事物，具体怎么影响市场还要看，但对他全年的指引给出的300到350个亿影响不大。我的看法就是300个亿呢，其实应该是算是保守的。有没有完成350个亿，我不是很确定。一会儿我们算估值的时候，我会用300个亿吧，保守一点，安全一点吧。
Then maybe if we switch to technology, how are we making progress in terms of supporting our customers and their requirements? Maybe first with low NA?
Well, let me start maybe with EUV in general, because you know that low NA, high NA are going to be combined at some point by our customer in order to optimize basically their technology, their product roadmap, and also their cost. So it's very important that we make progress on both platforms. When it comes to low NA, I think some great achievement this quarter. We have upgraded our first system in the field to the final specification, 220 wafer per hour. Roger was mentioning that this starts to have a positive impact basically on our margin in Q1. Good adoption from our customer. They are all shifting basically to this platform, and we really expect that the 3800 is going to become, on the very, very short term, the main tool for low NA. Now, this is very important. We talked a lot about litho intensity, about cost of technology in our capital market day. And the progress on productivity basically allow us to execute with our customer on cost of technology. And as a result, we start to see the opportunity to have more EUV single expose adoption, of course, at the expense of multi-patterning. This is great for our customer because it helps with cycle time, simplification, yield. And of course, for ASML, this means that this litho intensity, especially for DRAM now, is continuing to increase.
And then looking at high NA, we recently had a SPIE conference back in February. Can you share some of the results that came from that conference?
Yeah, so I think SPIE was a very good event because we saw our customer being very eager to share basically their results on high NA. A few strong examples. I think Intel was explaining that they had exposed more than 30,000 wafer on their tool. They also pointed very strongly to the fact that high-NA could help them simplify their process. And they mentioned one layer where they could reduce basically the number of process steps from 40 to 10, which of course helps with cycle time, yield, and process complexity. Samsung also on the same topic said that high-NA could reduce their cycle time, in fact, by 60%. So we start to see basically some of the value of high-NA being recognized, being measured in some way by our customer, which is very, very encouraging. Now on top of that, we have now shipped all our EXE 5000, and 3 of our customers have this tool either installed or under installation. So we also continue to expect basically a lot more data, a lot more learning on high-NA in the coming weeks.
这里是就公司的科技的研发进行了一定的描述啊，它这里面主要分成 low NA 和 high NA。这个 low NA high NA 就是它这个光刻机的半径好像是 low NA 好像是 0.33，high NA 是 0.55，大概什么样子。那个 0.33的那个 low NA 呢，就是现在主流的光刻机。然后那个高的那个 high NA 的那个好像叫 numeric upspectrum 这么一个东西，它是主要是制作2纳米的进程，所以低的是3到7纳米，高的是那个2纳米的进程。2纳米的主要进程是目前还刚刚处于商业化的这么一个阶段，所以它给出的这个方向就是说，它这2方面需求都比较强大。那在这个 low NA 的这个就是主流的需求这个光刻机上呢，他们达到了更高的一个利润率，然后同时又有一定的更新，然后在高 NA 的这个光刻机上呢，也得到了不错的反响。通过这个英特尔和这个三星，然后都说它这个high NA 通过制作2纳米的进程，主要是配合它的这个 DRAM， 还有它这个 HB RAM， 然后 HB high band RAM 这个流程都提高了非常有效率的进展。那我们接下来看。
Maybe back to you, Roger. If you can maybe follow up on Christoph's comments around tariffs, how do you see that potentially impacting 2025 for ASML?
I think Christoph said it. First of all, it's a very dynamic field that we're operating in when it comes to tariffs. And maybe it would be good to have a bit of a breakdown where it could potentially affect the ecosystem. So first off, obviously, you have tariffs that could be imposed on shipments of entire systems, new systems into the United States. So that's one category. The second category would be tariffs imposed on parts and tools that you use for field operations in the United States. The third category could be on what we import into the United States for manufacturing in the U.S. As you know, we have some manufacturing capability in the U.S., so anything related to that would be the third category. And the fourth could be, any other country imposing tariffs on things that are being shipped from the United States into those countries. So those are the different, I would say, direct implications of tariffs. We're very actively working with the entire ecosystem to try and minimize the overall impact on the whole ecosystem as a result of that. Once we have better understanding of how exactly it all works. But clearly, our intent is that the impact that it should have on our financials should be as limited as possible. Then, of course, you have the indirect effect, and this is, what Christophe also talked about. So, to what extent will it have an impact on global GDP? To what extent will it have an impact on end market total market demand? And I think it's way too early to discuss that, and therefore it's quite impossible actually to put a number on that.
那他在这部分讲的是，可能是大家最关心的，他们会尽可能的去调节整个这个生产线，然后调节他们的从这个会直接和间接两大方面来解释一下，然后关税这方面的会明白这个影响。首先呢，有4个方面是来自直接影响。那第一个影响呢，就是说整个关税这个市场环境还是比较新的，所以他们也没有办法太多确定。但是可以确定，就是说第一方面可能是从它的直接运输上面有影响，就是整个系统如果所有东西都要运输，就是凡是要运到美国新的机器，这些都会产生关税。那第二个呢，就是它的这个在美国需要生产用的这个工具和零件也要产生关税。第三方面就是他们有的工具和零件是要从他们工厂运到美国，然后产生了关税。然后第4方面呢是从其他国家产生了关税，比如说其他国家的东西要运送到美国，那也要产生关税。这是4个直接的方面。那2个非直接的方面呢，它就是说从全球来讲的话，这个关税会不会影响全球的 GDP， 会不会影响整个市场的需求，这2个方面都是非直接因素。
Having said all that, how do you look at Q2 in terms of a guidance? Can you provide some detail there?
Yeah, so when it comes to revenue, we expect revenue between 7.2 and 7.7 billion euros for Q2. Again, approximately 2 billion for the installed base business. Gross margin, we expect somewhere between 50 and 53%. That is a wider bandwidth than we typically apply, but that really is, as a result of the uncertainty when it comes to tariffs. So both, what is the tariff situation, and also how does it get allocated? Of course, short term there are some uncertainties there, so that's why we chose to have a wider bandwidth for gross margin this quarter.
就第2季度呢，它给的是7.2个 billion， 那它的这个 gross margin 呢，给的是50%到53%。他说这是他们给的最大区间，但是鉴于市场的不确定性，和关税，因为关税会造成磨损嘛，那他们的利润就会下降。他们会选择不同的就是或者定价或者营销方式来尽量提高他们这个 margin。那接下来他要讲他的全年的指引和他这个 gross margin。
And then with that in mind, how are you looking at the whole year from a gross margin point of view?
Yeah, so first quarter 54%, second quarter, as I just said, between 50 and 53%. We do expect the second half of the year, second half year, to be a little bit lower in terms of gross margin. There's a number of reasons for that. As you know, and Christophe talked about it, about the high-NA systems that we're in the process of shipping. We do expect the second half to be stronger when it comes to revenue recognition than the first half, and as you know, high-NA is still margin dilutive, so therefore we expect a negative impact on the gross margin in the second half as a result of that in comparison to the first half. We also expect a little bit less upgrade business in the second half in comparison to the first half, and also, as we just said, we have the uncertainty when it comes to tariffs. If you take it all together, Again, with the caveat of the uncertainty around tariffs that we need to mention, we continue to expect a gross margin between 51% and 53% for the whole year.
那好，对全年的指引呢，就是收入还是最开始说的300到350个亿，然后在 gross margin 上呢，第一个季度是54%，第二季度是50%到53%，然后他没有具体说，但是他说下半年呢这个 margin 会稍微 lower 一些，但是收入会稍微高一点，主要原因就是说它这个 high NA 呢，就是2纳米进程这个机器呢，还是在这个非商业化阶段，商业化阶段初期，所以说它会因为没有量产嘛，你可想它这个 margin 可能会要就是牺牲一些 margin。那接下来他就是说还有一个原因就是也是关税造成不确定性，所以说他们觉得这个下半年的这个 gross margin 可能没有上半年好，就暂时就这些，我们接着看。
Then switching to share buyback, so that we ended the year 2024 with a lot of cash. We executed some share buyback in Q1. So can you provide a little bit more detail on the plans around returning cash to shareholders for the rest of the year?
So indeed, strong share buyback in the first quarter. 2.7 billion euros worth of shares were bought back in Q1. When it comes to dividends, we paid an interim dividend in the first quarter of 1.52 euros per ordinary share. Our proposal to the AGM is to pay a final dividend of 1.84 euros per ordinary share. If you combine that all, that would get you to 6.40 euros per ordinary share as the total dividend over the year 2024.
这里呢，他说的最有用的一个信息呢，就是在2025年的第一个季度，公司回购了这个价值2.7个 billion 的股票，我算了一下，大概是4个 million 的股票，4个 million 的股票，根据公司现有的股份啊，大概是1%左右。这个1%我们一会儿会用来算估值。那如果它每个季度都回购1%的话，那总的来说就是回购4%。行，那我们接着看。
Christoph, then maybe one last question is if you can give us a little bit of a forward-looking view on how you see the market, etc., beyond 2025.
Well, I think, as I said, so first, AI has been very strong and has driven the industry in the last few quarters. We still see a lot of strength in AI. In fact, some of the demand for this year, of course, but also for next year has solidified, so that's very encouraging. Now, if we add to that the discussion with our customer, points to 2025 and 2026 to be both a growth year, as we explained in a previous discussion. Now, of course, Roger went into the details. There's this new uncertainty around tariff. And like many experts, many businesses are explaining, this is, of course, something that we don't know how to quantify yet. But this is adding definitely uncertainty on the long term. Now, if we look at the market itself, we expect a shift towards more advanced technology. This is true for logic. This is true for DRAM. And as we explained in Capital Market Day, these are basically technologies that will require more advanced lithography. Also explain, it's very, very important, that the progress we have made on the 3800 and INA bring our customer the technology they need to switch more and more layers from multi-patterning to single expose EUV. And this is, of course, a good thing when it comes to litho intensity. With all of that, Jim, so we feel that we are making a very good step towards our guidance given at the Capital Market Day in November for 2030, with a range of revenue between 44 and 60 billion euro and a gross margin range between 56 and 60%.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Christoph. And with that, I'd like to remind you all that we will host our annual general meeting on April 23rd.
这段呢，他主要就是讲了一下，他认为这个关税对市场造成了很强的不确定性，对未来。那他对2030年的展望呢，就是可以确定的，就是市场对光刻机的需求还是很旺盛的，因为他的所有的客户都在积极的向更高的这个科技发展，尤其在他们这个新升级的这个低端的产品，和这个和这个high NA 的高端的产品，然后就是需求更加旺盛，所以这个趋势是没有受到影响的。那最后呢，他说了一下，到2023年的时候，他给出了一个不是2023年，到2030年的时候，到时候可以达到一个440亿到600亿的这么一个全年收入的这么一个指引。我大概算了一下，如果是440亿的话，大概是相当于每年10%的这么一个 compound rate growth revenue。然后如果是60%，因为它这是 euro 哈，60个 billion 的话，600个亿的话，那大概是15%。我们还是一会儿再用这个算一下估值。那这次财报解读就到这儿，谢谢。 那我们现在看一下估值。在说估值以前呢，我先声明一下，这一期视频呢是纯粹为了我投资的个人分享还有娱乐，不能作为投资建议。谢谢大家理解。那我现在说一下我对它的估值的理解。那就是说，我们先看它的收入好了。它的收入呢，从它的市销率看，如果未来的话，我们从保守的上面看，如果是它未来只有10%的这么一个增长的话，它的市销率应该是在4到6之间。那它现在的市销率呢是8，那就显然是非常非常的高估。可是我们如果按15来看的话呢，那它的市销率就可以来到6到10之间。6到10的话，鉴于它是一个确定性比较强、护城河比较强的这个公司呢，那现在的这个市销率是8，那8到10之间，那它现在已经是处于一个合理的估值位置了。那我们接下来看一下它的现金流。现金流它的每年增长也是10%的话，那它现金流回报率应该是在5%左右。那现在是4%的话，如果想到5%，可能还有20%的跌幅这么空间，那就是这么一个估值。那我们看一下从 earning 我自己的这个 model 里面看，我自己这个 model 呢，我给它的预测是未来收入呢，未来5年10%的这么一个增长，然后呢net profit 的大概28%， 28%的来源是源自于gross profit OK， net margin gross margin， 然后把这个去掉 OK， 我们看一下10年。大家可以看出来，过去10年它的 gross margin 一直在45，这几年可以达到50，我觉得它以后会保持50以上，应该不是什么大问题。然后呢，它的 net margin 呢，最好的时候有达到过31%，但大部分时候呢都是在25%到30%之间。那我取了一个中间值28%作为它的 net margin， 然后我预判如果股价维持现在这个样子，公司每年会达到4%的这么一个股价回购，和它的现在的股息每年大概是0.26%的话，这个还有可能增长。我算下来的话，是未来在5年以后股价将达到1200块钱，那这个是一个相对保守的数据。那就是说，如果你想得到100%的回报的话，你在600块钱买的话，你就可以得到一个100%的回报5年以后。我这是一个保守的数据。我们今天股价一度来到最低点是638，我觉得其实这个位置就可以开仓了。如果按刚才的这个现金流回报率算的话，这个情况就是说，公司的现金会大幅下降，然后因为公司需要大量的研发或者收购这样的事情发生的话，它这个现金流会急速下降。那这种情况的话呢，就会比较就可能再有20%的跌幅。那我们要有心理准备，也可能股价会在500到650之间波动，我是这样理解的啦。所以说，我觉得如果600块钱能买到是一个不错的位置，然后如果再往下跌的话，再分批加仓，那就是这样。那好，谢谢大家，这期就聊到这里。我们下期再见，拜拜。